right, Drew. So I pitched this to you earlier this week, and I've been really excited for it. So fantasy football is around the corner, you guys. If you guys are not in a league, get into a league. Drew, our league is going to start in a few weeks, actually, both of our leagues. And I would not be surprised if I ask if you want to join a third league. So keep your phone on. But anyways, okay, good. So anyways, so it got us, me thinking of some creative drafts. And so I figured we would kick off some fun fantasy drafts. And tonight's theme will be drafting the best players that have never won a championship. Drew, we're going to go 5 rounds and we're going to pick you're going to pick your best 5 and then we'll go in order. We're going to do a coin flip, so that way we see who gets the number 1 pick. So, Drew, call it.
Heads.
And we got a heads. So, Drew, you get the first pick.
Oh, my God.
And we're going to go snake order. So.
Okay, wait. So, what are the sports that we have to stay within?
Basketball, football, baseball. That's it.
Basketball, baseball.
NFL, NBA, and MLB.
Okay. Well, I'm going to start with a homer pick because I don't even know if he's even on your list.
Go ahead.
And this is my favorite player of all time in baseball history. Someone I always looked up to. I know people are going to give me hate because he was on steroids. Never confirmed, by the way. I'm going to go with Barry Bonds. Barry Bonds is the home run leader. Yes, I said it. He is the home run leader in Major League Baseball. I know Major League Baseball wants to put an asterisk on it, but they want to put an asterisk on everything. So, anyway, this team should have the Giants should have won the World Series in 2002. They lost a lot of steam, and we absolutely died against the Angels. I remember watching it. Which shout out Central Valley, by the way. There was a guy named Troy Gloss who was on the Angels team. He actually just got signed as the head coach of the baseball team at Buchanan High School. So congratulations to the Central Valley and to Troy Glass for getting an absolute beast of a baseball program in the Central Valley and Buchanan High School. And if you don't know what Buchanan High School is, they're the guys who produced Justin Wilson, who won the College World Series for Fresno State as the closer, who ended up being a closer for a couple of years with the Yankees. He was a closer for the Cubs, the Pirates. I can't name all the teams that he's been with, but Justin Wilson, he's a product of Buchanan. There's actually a lot of other guys, but Justin Wilson's the only one that comes to mind right now. So anyway, so shout out to them. Anyway, Barry Bonds, my number 1. Like I said, he's the home run leader. This guy walked more than he struck out. I don't think that's 100% accurate, but this is always been my argument that he is the first player and only player to ever hit 500 home runs and have 500 stolen bases in a career. He is the only player who has ever reached that right now. And the guy is not considered for the Hall of Fame. And again, I know, well, he was on steroids. Listen, he became a 500 guy before he came on steroids. He deserved better teams than he got in San Francisco. He should have won a championship. And he is one of those guys that I will forever be sick to my stomach that never won a World Series title, because this guy was the best we had ever seen at hitting the ball. I know a lot of people gush about Ohtani. Listen, Ohtani is fantastic, but Barry Bonds, this guy would hit 320 and hit as many more home runs than Ohtani, and he walked way more than Ohtani does. So he was the best hitter I've ever seen still to this day. He's absolutely ridiculous. Barry Bonds is my number 1 pick.
So funny story is I was actually going to pick Barry Bonds first overall if you just so happened to skip him, but couldn't put it past you.
No, you weren't.
No,
Don't
I
lie
swear
to me.
So funny thing is he actually was the inspiration for this draft. So because I had seen obviously the statistics on him, and truthfully, he was a Hall of Famer before he got to the Giants, and then he went to the Giants after Pittsburgh and just solidified himself. And the fact that he's not in the Hall of Fame is kind of boo-boo. But anyways, he was the inspiration of like players that have never won a championship. He was the first one I thought of, and I was like, oh, I bet we would have fun doing this little fantasy draft of that. So yes, he would have been my first pick as well. So okay,
I still call lies, but that's right.
That's fine. You can call whatever you want. It's whatever. Okay, so here's what's fun. I actually have like a list of like 20 something that I can pick from, so it's kind of tough to determine who I would
20
say.
guys that I wrote down because I'm the best.
I am. Thank you for recognizing that. So gosh, who do I want to go with? You know what? I think I'm going to go with a little homer pick as well, since you did one. I'm going to go with Tim Brown. Hall of Famer, of course, former Raiders receiver. I think he would be my first overall pick for one of the best players to never win a championship. He came close, though, with the Raiders in the 2002 season against Tampa Bay. He also teammates with Jerry Rice and top 10 in all-time receiving, which we actually played a fun game with the backseat guys and found that out. So Tim Brown would be my first pick, and I will stand on that hill that it's a homer pick. So.
It's all right, man. Honestly, it's a really good pick because he's one of the most underrated receivers of all time.
Yeah.
I mean, we didn't even know he was top 10. And we're like, oh, crap. I can't believe we didn't forget about him.
Quietly the top 10.
He was so good for so many years. I don't hate that pick. I mean, hey, maybe because it's a homer pick, but I really love that pick. So good for you. All right. I'm going to go with an obvious one. I got to go with Dan Marino. Listen, Dan Marino, in my opinion, I think at times was better than John Elway, but he never had the teams that John Elway had. I think the arm talent was, I would say it's closer to Patrick Mahomes. And his body type was almost like a Ben Roethlisberger, but a little shorter. Not as fat, but he was a strong dude. I mean, this guy was never a skinny quarterback. He was always a big dude, and he took a lot of hits. And unfortunately, I'm going to kind of poo-poo on Miami right now, but unfortunately, he was in Miami.
Yeah,
so,
he was. So he was there for a long time.
Yeah, Dan Marino, I think it's a shame that this guy was so talented. It would be, in my opinion, right now, I think it would be like if Justin Herbert never won a championship. And I know as a Raider fan, that's like, oh, how could you? But listen, Justin Herbert is such a talented quarterback. Like if he never wins, it's going to be kind of a shame. Hopefully he wins with another team other than Chargers, Chiefs, or Broncos. But if he does win one, hopefully he can win one in his career, because I think he's just so talented and just on an underachieving team. So I'm going to go with Dan Marino.
All right. Well, you went with an obvious one in the NFL. I'm going to go with an obvious one in the NBA. I'm going to say Charles Barkley. He's one of the top 50 all-time NBA players, and I don't think people realize how great of a player he was back then. I mean, he helped lead the Suns to the NBA Finals, ultimately lost to Michael Jordan. But, for a long time, he was like aggressive in the paint, rebounder, a scorer. He did everything for the Phoenix Suns for a long time. I believe he also teamed up with Elijah Wan and Clyde Drexler in Houston for a little bit of time. But, a lot of people know him as an analyst, but people really underestimate how great of a player he was. So I'm going to say Barkley as my second pick.
Okay. So I'm going to stick with the NFL because I'm kind of curious who your number 3 is going to be. I'm going to go with Barry Sanders. Barry Sanders
a great one.
Was my very favorite running back growing up watching football. I love watching Barry Sanders. He was something we had never, ever seen before. And now it just comes like, that's just what you're supposed to do as a running back. Now, like, he changed the running back position. The dude was absolutely filthy. The Lions should have never, ever sniffed postseason play or never sniffed as many wins as they did if it wasn't for Barry Sanders. Barry Sanders was ridiculously good. The dude changed the NFL. I mean, forever. I was so sad when I heard that he was retiring because I just felt like he was the best for so many years.
Mm-hmm.
Dude was shifty. Dude was fast. I mean, I can't remember a time where Barry Sanders was tackled on the very first tackle. Like, I just remember him always breaking the first tackle, whether it was for a loss or not.
Yeah.
It always seemed like every time he touched the ball, he never went down in the first tackle. It was always the second tackler. God, he was he was nice. And that's all I can say. He was just so nice. I'm going to go with Barry Sanders at 3 for me.
All right. So this one is a bit of I wouldn't say a reach. I'm more than happy to make this one, and I hope that you appreciate it just because it'll kind of reminisce about our childhood. But I'm going to go with it's a baseball pick, Ken Griffey Jr., the greatest swing in baseball. I actually remember him the most, seeing him with his backwards hat in the home run derby, and then he was so great on the Mariners, and then when he went to the Reds, still is great. And I don't know why, but he just has been ingrained in my childhood in terms of like a great baseball player, fun to see, very, very likable, very much the face of the league, and he has, without a doubt, the sweetest swing of all time, arguably, in all of the majors. And I think it's a shame that it's not a shame, but I'm really glad that there's a lot of great baseball players that recognize how great of a player he is. And it's just a shame that he was never able to get a championship. And I think one of the cool things too, is when he was younger in his career, him being able to play some games with his dad when they were both on the Mariners. And funny thing is, I actually saw a clip today where it was, I think, when I can't remember if his dad was playing for the Yankees or against the Yankees. And he told a story about how he's sitting in a dugout, and it was just him and another kid. And apparently George Steinbrenner told an attendant to get Ken Griffey Jr. out of the dugout because he didn't want anybody there. And Ken Griffey Sr. took note of that, and so did Ken Griffey Jr. And so he told a fan that if every other team didn't want to sign him, but only the Yankees offer a contract, he said, I'd retire. I wouldn't sign with the Yankees no matter what. And I just thought that was so funny. And just a perfect synopsis of like Ken Griffey as he is in integrity. So
the son is absolutely going ham on Coco Melon. So with my number 4 pick, I'm going to go with maybe someone that you didn't have written down.
I think you're on number 3.
No, I'm on 4. I have Bonds, Marino, Sanders.
Oh, that's right. I forgot to write down Sanders. Okay, go ahead. 4.
So my number 4 pick is going to be, this might be another shocker, but I'm going to go with Tony Gwynn of the San Diego Padres.
Man, he was on my list. Okay, good one.
As much as Ken Griffey Jr. changed the game and is kind of what the players are now, Tony Gwynn was the purest hitter I've ever seen. I don't remember him striking out. I don't ever remembering him not getting a hit at least once in a game.
Yeah.
Now listen, I never watched the Padres every single day. I was a Giants fan. I always watched the Giants, but every time the Giants faced Tony Gwynn, he always was getting a hit. He wasn't the biggest like power hitter of all time, but he's one of those guys where he was the closest to ever come to hitting 400 that anyone has ever done, which was in 94. Yeah, 94, where he hit 394, which is just ungodly. I mean, and then like I always see a lot of videos coming up where Tony Gwynn was talking to kids on like how to hit, and like I'll watch those videos, and then like I'll be playing with my son baseball, and I'll be like, I'm going to do what Tony Gwynn said. Just kind of curious of what it looks like. And just, it's amazing. Just like the little things that he was able to explain to you, that he was able to tell kids or people or, teammates, whatever it is, how to hit. And it's just like, it seems so easy to him, but when he talks about it, you're just like, oh, dude, this guy, oh my God, like he just knew how to get the best. Like this guy worked at it so hard. Tony Gwynn is one of those guys that I don't care if he was with a rival team. This guy deserved a championship. He was so amazing. He actually was really good friends with Barry Bonds for a long time because great recognizes great. And Tony Gwynn was one of those guys who just was in awe of what Barry Bonds could do, and Bonds vice versa. He was always in awe of what Tony Gwynn. Barry Bonds would always have interviews talking about, I could never do what Tony Gwynn does. I could never hit the way he does. It's ridiculous how he does it.
Yeah.
And Gwynn would say the same thing, and Bonds would just chuckle because he's like, dude, I could never hit 400. There's no way. And so it's just Tony Gwynn is one of the best players to ever play in Major League Baseball. I think he is so underrated. He's not talked about enough because he wasn't this power home run hitter. He was more of this base hit guy. But as a kid growing up, when you're learning baseball, these guys don't want you to learn how to hit home runs. They want you to learn how to hit base hits, line drives, find the holes. And Tony Gwynn was the guy to watch.
Yeah.
So.
That's a good one. All right. So my number 4, I'm going to go with Allen Iverson. You know, you want to talk about someone who changed the game. I think in basketball, you know, he made it a point to make your ball handling a strength. And, you know, he's known for pound for pound being like the best NBA player just because he was not afraid of anything. He would go right to the rack. He'd also, you know, had all these dribble combinations to where he'd get a mid-range shot. And, you know, in the 2001 NBA Finals against the Lakers that had a ridiculous playoff run, they went, I think it was like 15-1 or 16-1. The one loss that they had was against the 76ers in that playoffs with Allen Iverson. I believe he had to score like 50 points or 49 points or something like that. But Allen Iverson made basketball essentially cool for those that grew up in, you know, rough areas with the elbow sleeve, with the headbands, with the, you know, I think he used the one that started like the compression pants and some other cool stuff. And not only that, but he was a phenomenal player on the 76ers. And then he got traded to the Nuggets and was a great player on there and helped him get to the playoffs when Carmelo Anthony was first in the league. So Allen Iverson is one of the great players that never won a championship. And he is number 4. He's my 4th pick on this list.
Okay, so my number 5, I'm actually between a few players, but I got to go a basketball player. And it's just a guy that I always rooted for, that I really liked watching play, even though he did end up on the Lakers. But I'm going to go with Steve Nash.
That's a great one.
Steve Nash was the newer age when I was, you know, in high school. He was the newer age John Stockton. Yeah. We always killed John Stockton for not shooting much. Steve Nash would shoot, but he knew when to pick and choose when to do it. John Stockton, it always seemed like he was more of the guy who rather was seeking the assist rather than the shot. You know, he was more the guy going to the mailman and Karl Malone. But Steve Nash, although, yes, he would defer to Amari Stoudemire a lot of the times, or, you know, Dirk Nowitzki, you know, Kobe Bryant towards the end of his career and all that. Steve Nash was a guy who was just an all-time teammate. And I feel like we lost what he was capable of doing because when he was the coach for the Brooklyn Nets, which now we know it really wasn't his fault. Yeah. He really wasn't the issue there. You know, I feel like we lost what Steve Nash really was, and Steve Nash was a absolute baller. The dude just made some insane plays. And it was just simple moves. It was basic moves that he just perfected so well that he knew who he was going to throw to, but you had to guess. Like, you didn't know who he was going to throw to. You know, he knew what he was going to do, you know, 10 steps before he was even across the half court line. And you just kind of had to guess what he was going to do. I think his ball handling skills was very underrated. To be a point guard in the NBA, especially then, where hand checking was still allowed, and with the players getting better and better each and every year, I think was very underrated. Now, he wasn't an Allen Iverson type ball handler, but he was a guy I don't remember ever getting the ball stolen from him. I just feel like he was so good at keeping the ball, knowing how to get guys in the right spots. He wasn't the best defender, but he also wasn't that big of a liability. To me, Allen Iverson a lot of the times was a liability defensively in a lot of games. So my defer would be Steve Nash over him, even though I was thinking about putting Allen Iverson on there just because you're right. He changed the game. He absolutely changed the game, and he would fit today's game so well.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I'm going to go with Steve Nash. I think Steve Nash was one of the players I used to love watching. Yeah. If he was ever on TV, I was always watching him because he was just he made things happen. It wasn't what he did. It's just that he played the game of basketball so well. He perfected just the small things so well that he made the game exciting. He was Chris Paul before Chris Paul.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely right. Okay. So this is a tough one because there is a bunch of players still that I can choose with the last pick. But I'm going to give a couple of honorable mentions before I do this. So got to give 2 honorable mentions, one to Ichiro. I think he's a player that we all grew up with at least. Good player. And then Jim Kelly, I think we would be remiss. 4 times going to the Super Bowl, not winning it. He's a player that, considered all time. Did you know that Ted Williams also never won a championship in baseball?
Yes, I did.
It's absolutely crazy.
Because of the what is it? The Black Sox scandal? Is that what it's called?
Yeah. Also, Willie McCovey, excuse me. Also, another one of the players that's all time never won a championship in baseball. So I thought that was interesting.
Yes.
Anyways,
couple but I can't have 2 Giants on there. I'm saying that's not looking at everyone else.
Well, that's okay. So this player, then former Raider, I'm going to go with Randy Moss. I think he is one of the greatest receivers in NFL history. I think what was great is, in Minnesota, there was no one that was going to stop him. Absolutely no one was capable of stopping him or containing him. He then goes to the Raiders. He essentially had like a vacation for many of the seasons with us. Did not produce like what we were hoping for. And that was kind of the dark ages of the Raiders. And then he goes to New England and basically rejuvenates his career, looks even better than when he was in Minnesota. And then, I think he carried on having a really great year. And, when he got older, he wasn't nearly as fast. He couldn't get off the line of scrimmage as well. But, I mean, no doubt he is one of the NFL wide receivers that changed the game, or at least how teams look at receivers. There's literally a segment on Monday Night Football called You Got Mossed that pays homage to him every Monday about, you going up there at the high point of the ball and taking it from a defender and, you stealing basically the catch and making a highlight. Like when you have a segment or a verb named for you in terms of like in your sport, I mean, all-time great, and unfortunately never won a championship, but he would be my 5th pick.
It's a good one. I would probably put Tony Gonzalez over him. Tony Gonzalez was just Mr. Consistent. Randy Moss had all the talent in the world, but Tony Gonzalez was on some really bad Chiefs teams, which thank God.
Yeah.
But he was so talented. The dude was just, you knew he was going to get, Travis Kelce numbers every time. Like you knew he was going to have 10 catches, over 100 yards. You knew he was going to have at least a touchdown in a game.
Yeah.
It was just a foregone conclusion. There was no way of stopping Tony Gonzalez.
Yeah.
So I would probably put him over Randy Moss. Not saying that's wrong, but I did respect Tony Gonzalez game a little bit more than Randy Moss, even though Randy Moss was phenomenal. God. Yeah. I just the Raiders year was a little disheartening. Yeah, it was a little disheartening, but God, when he went to New England and they had that 16-0 run where they were going into the Super Bowl undefeated, it was just like you felt like, oh, it's going to happen. And it was just a surprise that the Giants ended up winning that.
Yeah. Well, another player who I almost put on there, and I was literally 49-51, was Carmelo Anthony. And because he's somebody that I was like, man, he never won a championship, and he's like top 10 in scoring. He's won all these Olympic gold medals. He's the only player, I think, in the 03 draft, along with, Bosh, Wade, LeBron James, and Chris Paul. So he's one of two that have never won a championship from that draft yet, out of those predominant players. And, Chris Paul could have been another one, but, I was debating between Carmelo and Moss, and I just felt like when I was growing up, and then even, just recently, Moss has changed the game to where, players look up to him in the way he approaches the game and stuff. Like, if I'm not mistaken, Justin Jefferson, said that Moss was like a player he idolized growing up, and he plays very similar to him. He just, so it's just, he has still an imprint on the league that is rippling through all this time. And he's been retired and I think inducted in the Hall of Fame. So he still feels like he's a part of the game, even though he's been away from it for so many years. So
yeah. Randy Moss was absolutely ridiculous. He was
what they call a cheat code.
Yeah. He was 6'4" and just one of the fastest players in the league. I mean, just that's unfair to have a guy who's that tall and could run faster than most players. Just was unfair.
And the way he ran was like effortless. It didn't even look like he was trying. He would just start his stride, and the next thing you know, he was 40 yards down the field with no one next to him.
I do think about too. There's I know that he went to Marshall, but he was going to, I want to say University of Miami, but I might be wrong. I forgot what college he was actually going to be going to, but then he got kicked out for some off the field issue. I don't remember exactly what it was, but he got kicked off, and so then he had to go to like junior college, and then ended up on Marshall because of his grades and whatnot. But like, I just kind of always think like if he went to it was a Power 5 school. I want to say it was Miami, but I'm not 100% sure on it. So, but if it was Miami, like I just am kind of curious, like if he went to Miami, had that college career, like he still would be a Hall of Famer. I don't see that ever changing. It's just like he probably wouldn't have gone to Minnesota. He probably would have gone to a different team.
Yeah.
And I always think about some of those things every now and then, like, okay, what would have happened with his career if he was on this team or ended up going to this team. So I always think about stuff like that sometimes.
The college was Florida State. So
Florida State, yes. I knew it was in Florida. Yeah. And that was that school was, and especially in that time, back then, they were absolutely dominant. He would have been top 5 pick in the NFL draft if he would have went to Florida State for sure.
Yeah.